Jake Parker with the Security Industry Association, and welcome to the first kickoff event for the new Congressional School Safety Caucus. We're glad you're here. I know we have a full house here. We've got more lunches on the way and some extra chairs. So we are very thrilled that Congressman Rick Larsen and Congresswoman Susan Brooks have joined together to form a group of members that are interested in supporting solutions to the school safety and security issues that we've become well aware of in recent years. And before we go any further, I'll hand this over to Congressman Larsen. He is a member of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and the House Armed Services Committee, and has done some wonderful work here in Congress. Happy to have you, sir.
Thanks a lot. Oh, hold your applause. You're way too kind. Thank you so much. No, just kidding. It's great to be here with you today, and I appreciate the opportunity to help kick off the School Safety Caucus with my colleague, Congresswoman Brooks. I want to thank the Security Industry Association as well for helping to organize the event, and I want to thank all of you as well for coming to at least hear some of the stories that a lot of us have in our own districts and from the industry and from school districts around the country. The briefing today, though, is obviously, I would say, extremely topical. Incidents of violence in our schools and our university campuses are occurring at a rate that we haven't seen anywhere in the developed world. And this disturbing trend is compounded by underreported and increased instances of sexual assault, of bullying, and other forms of violence and intimidation. Just some numbers, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 7% of high school students in the U.S. were threatened with a weapon on school property within the previous year. More than 5% had brought a knife, a gun, or a club to school over the previous month, and 7% have skipped school because they felt unsafe. So we have quite a long way to go before our students feel safe and secure while they learn. And of course, a lot of good work is being done in schools all over the country to work on safety and to do everything they can to ensure student safety. So we don't want to discount that. But there's still a problem, and that's why Congresswoman Brooks and I created the newly formed Congressional School Safety Caucus and encourage your bosses to become members. I know Congresswoman Brooks shares my commitment to ensuring that our nation's schools and universities are the safest in the world. Working together with all of you, I think we can make progress toward that goal. We will focus on the best practices to keep schools safe, to make investments to empower schools to focus on what they do best, to teach students and prepare them for their futures. A personal story, at least happened in my district in 2014. 5 high school students at Marysville-Pilchuck High School were killed when a student opened fire in a crowded cafeteria and then turned the gun on himself. Not only did these students lose their lives, but their families lost their children. Their community has suffered a wound that is still not healed. And in fact, I was noting outside that since that shooting in the cafeteria, the school district shut the cafeteria down, has not been used since October 2014. And they're going to knock the cafeteria down and rebuild a new commons area because of the trauma that cafeteria represents for the entire community. So this tragedy, like others across the country, does underscore that we do have to support our schools and their approach to safety comprehensively. So that's why, in addition to launching the School Safety Caucus with Congresswoman Brooks, I've also introduced the School Safety Act of 2015, H.R. 2667. 2667. This legislation reauthorizes vital grant programs to increase physical deterrence, security assessments, security training, and coordination between schools and law enforcement. And when considering the security challenges facing our nation's schools, we'll inevitably be faced with the issue of gun violence as well. So while one of the key goals of the School Safety Caucus will be looking at ways to keep illegal firearms off of school property, Congresswoman Brooks and I are also committed to raising awareness about the importance of dedicating resources to school counseling, intervention, and to mental health services. as well as to the importance of disaster and emergency preparedness. So I'm glad to see that today's panel is working to highlight some of these critical strategic gaps in our school safety infrastructure. And again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today, and I want to say thanks to everybody who's taken their time to be here, to be on the panel, to the Security Industry Association and many others, including my staff, who helped put this together. I appreciate it very much. Thanks.
So we expect to hear from Congresswoman Brooks here shortly. And I thought before we have a very interesting panel for you today. Before we launch into that, just to recognize some of the other hosts of this event, we have Robert Boyd, the Executive Director of Secure Schools Alliance here, and we have Craig Sharman here with Tyco International. We also have the Electronic Security Association as well. And my boss here, Don Erickson, is the CEO of the Security Industry Association. Thank you for being here. Also, we have out back is a report from what's called the Partner Alliance for Safer Schools. It's a group that our association and several others put together with education and law enforcement officials to come up with some best practices and guidelines for school security, tiered based on the available resources. And we have Tom Becquerel here joining us from that group. He's with the Fairfax County Public Schools. Thank you for being here, sir. Okay, Congressman Brooks, I think, is here, so let me just introduce her real quickly. Congresswoman Brooks is a second-term Republican who represents 8 urban, suburban, and rural counties in central Indiana, including the north side of Indianapolis. She has a very interesting background as a deputy mayor of Indianapolis, a U.S. attorney, a community college administrator, and she is using this experience to help improve education, jobs, health care, and homeland security. She is a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, where she's working on mental health, substance abuse, biodefense, and Medicaid reform. She's also a member of the Ethics Committee. All right. And she's right here. Thank you for joining us. Why don't you come over here, Congressman?
Good afternoon, everyone. So very sorry, I'm a few minutes late. Was just in a hearing about the Zika virus. And so other things that we have to worry about and to be prepared for as a country. I want to thank you all for being here to discuss something that's near and dear to really every citizen in the country's heart, and that is the safety of our schools for our school children. And trying to make sure that we can do everything we can do to keep our kids safe in our schools. Right before the holidays, the Christmas holiday, there was an incident in one of our schools in Indiana, in Plainfield, Indiana, where an individual made threats, online threats of violence, causing actually the school to shut down early. And I've talked with parents and talked with law enforcement about that, but these are the types of things that sadly happen in school districts all across the country for various reasons. But when you close your doors early, send kids home from the Christmas break or for the holiday break, divert law enforcement resources to try to track down these types of threats and these types of issues, it does what we're all so concerned about, and that is the fear of terror in our schools and in our communities. And so while thankfully there was no violence and nothing happened at that school, I think many students, teachers, I'm the daughter of a teacher, sister of a teacher, son of a teacher-to-be, school administrators, they all are very concerned. This is one of their top concerns with respect to their role. And so we have to do everything we can to protect our young people. I'm really pleased to have some Hoosiers here with us. Dr. Maurer, Superintendent of Southwestern Consolidated School District of Shelby County, Dr. Maurer this is, just so you know, it was deemed the safest school in America. And it was regarded because of the work that Dr. Maurer and this school system did. Now think about that. That's a pretty high bar to set. But I also want to thank Tim Eckersley from Allegion. Allegion is an international company headquartered in Dublin, but their American headquarters, the corporate center, is in my district in Carmel, Indiana. And I have toured at Allegiant. I've visited with their employees, but they do have a facility on the east side of Indianapolis that does the manufacturing, producing the pushable exit doors that we're all kind of used to, devices for those doors. So I want to thank you for coming from Indiana to participate with this kind of kickoff of this caucus. I just saw Congressman Larson as he was leaving, and am very pleased to be a part of and to have signed on to his bill, which I don't know if he talked with you about, the School Safety Act, which will enable communities to enhance the security in their own schools. So keeping schools, it's something, whether it's a personal issue or I've dealt with this issue as a United States attorney when we had school shootings and violence in college campuses that were kind of starting between 2001 and 2007. I remember the Virginia Tech shooting, an issue like it was yesterday. But then when I came to Congress, I was involved in Emergency Preparedness, Response, and Communications Subcommittee, and just trying to remain very involved and engaged, and keeping the pressure on not only Congress, but also raising the level of awareness of what we all could be doing, what companies like Allegiant and others, what schools are doing. And with that, I'm really thrilled that so many of you showed up today to learn from these great experts. So thank you all for being here, and I look forward to working with you in the caucus further. Thank you.
All right, we've had some additional lunches arrive, so please don't be shy and grab lunch if you need it. Next, I'm going to introduce our panel. First, our moderator is Tim Eckersley. He's a 25-year veteran of the technology industry. He's an SIA board member, and as the Congressman mentioned, he works for Allegiant. Thank you, Allegiant, for co-hosting this event with us. They have responsibility for several brands you may be familiar with, including Schlage Locks and Von Duprin Door Hardware, which is ubiquitous here in the Capitol. Next, from my right, Robin Lambert. She works for the Rural School and Community Trust, a national nonprofit organization that addresses the relationship between schools and thriving communities. She works directly with community-based groups seeking to improve educational opportunities and address policy. She's also the long-term editor of Rural Policy Matters, where she researched and reported on a wide array of issues important to rural schools. In 2013, she researched and wrote Violence in U.S. K-12 Schools from 1974 to 2013, Patterns in Deadly Incidents and Mass Threat. And copies of this report is available out back, and it's something we're going to hear more about, but this is what has come to be a groundbreaking study in school violence. Next, we have Dr. Paula Mara. She is a superintendent in the Southwestern Consolidated School District in Shelby County. It's a rural school in Indiana. She's a certified school safety specialist, an ALICE instructor, which we'll hear more about, and she has a certification in event security training. Under her leadership, the school was honored to be the only district selected in Indiana to participate in the Homeland Security's Protective Security Advisor pilot program for comprehensive school security assessments, which were developed in response to the White House Gun Violence Reduction Initiative. The school's new safety standards and the work they've done there has led law enforcement and local media to deem it as the safest school in America. The school's safety features have been aired on NBC's Today Show, Fox News, and other networks, so we're interested to hear more from her. Lastly, we have Dr. Errol Suthers, he's the Director of Homegrown Violent Extremism Studies at the University of Southern California. He is the Managing Director of the Counterterrorism and Infrastructure for the consulting firm TAL Global Corporation. He was also Barack Obama's first nominee for the TSA administrator, and he was also California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger's Deputy Director for Critical Infrastructure in the California Office of Homeland Security. So without further ado, I will turn this over to Tim.
Great. Thanks, Jake. I appreciate it. So good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here. Obviously, a phenomenal forum, an esteemed panel of guests to help us talk through this topic. You know, it's been discussed already. I work for a company called Allegiant, and I obviously have a commercial interest in this space. But for me, this is so much more than that. This is a personal issue. I'm a father. I have a son that's in schools. I have seen firsthand some of the lack in security that exists in our public schools and our private schools, frankly, for that matter. And one of the things I love about working on the board with SIA is the alignment between Allegiant, who is actually focusing on enhancing the security of our students in the marketplace, and SIA, we're aligned on the fact that this is actually a moral obligation of our industry to provide a safer environment for our students to learn and thrive in. And so it's my pleasure to be here and opening up. So I'm going to actually start with you, Dr. Southers, if you don't mind. You obviously, and we've heard your background now, have a great level of expertise in this area of threat assessment. You've gone to school for that. You teach on that at the university, and you also have a company on assessments. Be curious, as you go around the country doing your work, how would you kind of assess, or how would you describe the threats that our schools are facing in today's environment?
Well, thank you, Tim. Congresswoman Brooks actually touched on it when she said fear of terror. And so as we look at the threats today in our school environment, schools are considered critical infrastructure, probably the most valuable critical infrastructure considering who's there. And we look at it from a homeland/national security perspective. Schools probably top the list of soft targets, not just in the United States, but globally. I'm just returning from Europe. I went there to speak to some leaders in France about the attacks that happened last year at Charlie Hebdo, and most recently in 13/11. And when I sat with those leaders expecting to talk about terrorism and the attacks, their first question they had was, "We want to talk to you about our schools." And I thought that was quite interesting. So soft targets globally are, again, just an issue as we talk about it here in the United States. Shootings that occur, why they occur. We're seeing instances of not just disgruntled employees, past and present, disgruntled students, past and present, but the motivation for that. So the threats, as we're doing assessments, obviously at the top of our list are those active shooter type incidents. But what's important as schools train and now introduce exercises and other things to prepare themselves, are they actually training to the threat that they have? And so the big issue that we have with assessments being done is that they have to assess the environment that they're in. And quite often what happens with law enforcement, and I've spent a career in law enforcement, is we try to do surgery before we do the physical exam. And schools need to do a physical exam of what their landscape looks like. What is the actual threat? Are you inviting a particular vulnerability? And then most importantly, policies, processes, technology have to dictate that response to those threats, and that can only be done through a comprehensive independent assessment.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Thank you. So, Dr. Marr, you have your school has been, or your school district is, and you know, I've talked to you now recently over the last couple of weeks. You're a phenomenal person, because it's not hard to find a administrator in a school district that's actually concerned about this topic. It's much harder to actually find somebody that's willing and able to do something about it, and take the challenge associated with that. So what got you interested in this, and how did you arrive at the learning that you've accomplished over the last several years in making your district one of the safest places in the United States?
Well, I think after Sandy Hook, it really became real to me that this could happen at any of our schools, including my school. And as a superintendent, we aren't trained in security. I have been trained to teach kids. That's what I do, is I educate kids. And so this was a whole different ball game when we start talking about keeping kids safe in schools. Teachers didn't sign up to use their bodies to catch bullets. Law enforcement did, and has, but that's not what we are educated to do, and it's not what we signed up to do. And so it was important to me that